Hey everyone, today I had Davey Jones with me. He is the CEO of Badao, which helps business owners create pop ups and forms to build their email list. He co founded many agencies before. He definitely knows what to do when it comes to create a great marketing strategy for your business. And Badao has been growing and growing and helping business owners like us connect with more people out there and grow their email list so you can warm your audience and be ready for that sale. He was kind enough to share a coupon code for our audience. So make sure to check the show notes for that and start using Badao on your websites. Let's dive in. Hey there, I am Nata and you're listening to the Accidental CEO podcast. This is a space for high performing entrepreneurs who have built real success but still find themselves tangled in the day to day. If you're done being the engine of your business and ready for scale with clarity, trust, and ease, you're in the right place. Each week, I'll bring you sharp strategies, identity level mindset shifts, and leadership tools to help you rise above the business and lead from alignment, not exhaustion. Because scaling isn't about doing more, it's about becoming more of who you're meant to be. Subscribe now and let's build a version of your business that finally supports you. You're not just winging it, you are leading it. But let's be honest, being the CEO and the everything else can get lonely, messy, and exhausting. That's why I created the Accidental CEO Collective, a free Facebook community for creative entrepreneurs who never planned to be the boss, but damn it, here we are. Inside, I go live every week to share the real stuff. Strategies that don't require a business degree, behind the scenes struggles, because you're not the only one, and wins that we actually celebrate, even the tiny ones. If you're a scrappy, smart, sometimes slightly burnout founder who is ready to lead with more clarity and less chaos, this is your room. We're building a business that works for us, not one that runs us into the ground. Come join us. Let's grow, mess up, pivot, and succeed together. Just search the Accidental CEO Collective on Facebook and join our group today. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Accidental CEO podcast. I'm your host, Nata Salvatore, and today I have Davey Jones with me. Davey is the CEO of Formalytics, the company behind the popular lead generation tool Badao, formerly Sumo. Yeah, I practice a lot, which helps business owners create the pop-ups and forms to build their email list, which is an amazing service. He's previously co-founded two other agencies, Davey and Krista, brand and web design agency that specialize in helping people create brands that book through custom brand and web designing and consulting, and Till Agency, digital advertising agency that manage millions of dollars in ad spend. So I'm sure we're going to have an amazing conversation today. Welcome, Davey.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting. We got to chat on my podcast a little while back, and then before that at Reset. So really excited to continue the conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wanted to just start it by telling everybody what specifically are you working on right now? What is the main focus of all of these businesses? And maybe a little bit more of where you're located so we have an idea of what things look like for you on a day-to-day basis. And then I want to go back until how did you get to where you are today?
Well, me and my family, a wife and two kids, two boys, that we live in Lexington, Virginia, which is a little bit of rural Virginia, but by way of Annapolis, Maryland. That's where both my wife and I grew up. So Lexington's relatively new to us. And yes, you listed a few different businesses. Like you mentioned, I co-founded two agencies, Davey and Krista and Till Agency. I still own Davey and Krista with my wife, Krista, very creatively named, of course. The brand and show it website design business. So you can find out more over at Davey and Chris over there. But really my day-to-day is focused on Badao. And so that is a lead generation form and pop-up tool for websites. And I'm sure we'll get more into what that looks like. Till Agency, I am no longer involved in, but it's still up and running. My two partners from that business still run it, Ryan and Jesse. Awesome guys. They do awesome work. So if you are looking for digital advertising, definitely worth checking them out.
Perfect. And was there a life before David and Krista and all the other stuff that you were doing? And how did you fall into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'd say entrepreneurship wasn't exactly on my radar. I went to school for theology and graduated with a degree in theology. And a number of things happened kind of as I was graduating. One of those things was getting married and kind of setting in like, I thought I would go on and do continuing education, get my master's, get my doctorate in theology and maybe teach that. But the practical reality of like, oh, I need to be able to feed a family set in, right? So I was working with a ministry called Young Life at a local public school, and the administration was like, "Hey, we like having you around. You should consider going into teaching." And so I quickly went into a program where I got my master's in education and started teaching. And all that to say, entrepreneurship just not on the radar. Krista, on the other hand, she got her degree in design and started working as a website designer out of school. And so that's kind of always been on her radar. But it was actually her first business was a wedding photography business. And so one of her internships or, one of her early jobs, she was working, with I think they were an invitation studio. So she'd see the pictures and things like that and thought maybe I could do this. And sure enough, she did. She started a very successful wedding photography business, serving, a luxury clientele in Annapolis. And, I thought that was cool. But I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. This is cool for you to pursue, that's fun, right? And then I quickly realized like, maybe a quarter into the year, like she had made more than I was going to make all year as a teacher. I love teaching though. So that wasn't really specifically what swayed me out of teaching. But just as her business grew, I kept on helping her out with that. So before she hired anybody, she would just ask me if I could help with stuff. And so I'd help with more and more and more until I got to the point where I was like, I just got to choose one. So I do miss the classroom a little bit. That was my first step into entrepreneurship and never really looked back since.
Yes, yeah, a lot of us find ourselves in that situation. I had no intention of starting any business of my own. I swear I was gonna live and die as a physical therapist, and I was happy to do that. And it's amazing how much it opens your eyes once you start seeing the possibilities, and you can still do a lot of things that you love in just in a different setting, in a way that you have a little bit more control, which is always good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially with teaching, I feel like I still teach on a daily basis. At this point, though, I'm just teaching about, how people can generate more leads for their business using different lead gen strategies. So definitely don't think anything's wasted. I mean, even my theology degree, grateful for that as well.
Was there a specific, like, pivotal moment that led you to realize, "I'll do a good job here with marketing and sales, and, I should jump ship and go over there?"
Yeah, well, part of it was just Krista's business growing and realizing for us to get to the next step, I was either going to have to commit to helping her or I was going to have to go back to teaching and then she was going to bring somebody on. And Krista, for whatever reason, liked working with me. And so we decided to make that leap. And so I jumped into really doing all the marketing and sales for our business. And for Davey and Krista, I mean, it's a design agency. I'm not a designer. And I always think it's funny. I always thought it was funny when I was on the phone with people and they'd be like, "Hey, can you give me some feedback on my brand?" And I was like, "No, you're talking to the wrong half of the business here." But that was my primary focus was growing that business, basically generating leads on a daily basis for that business so that we can continue booking clients and selling our templates and things like that. Something that happened along the way was that we would be building, we'd build somebody a website, but the natural next question is like, well, what's next? Like, what do I do from here? How do I get traffic to it? How does it, generate more leads for my business? So clients would ask us, and naturally, Krista would kick those questions back to me. And I started working with some clients one on one, specifically with Facebook and Instagram ads. That had become sort of a specialty of mine since I was doing that for Davey and Krista for that business. I really enjoyed doing that. I had two friends that ended up being in a similar situation, just similar spot. And we started talking about it and said, hey, we should start this ad agency together. And it was really at that moment when we started Till Agency. And that became the digital advertising agency. And we've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of different clients, probably a lot of names that your audience would be familiar with, like Show It and Flowdesk and Dipsado and CloudSpot. We ran ads for all these different companies, learned a ton over the course of my 5 or so years running Till Agency. And in addition to that, got to see what strategies worked across the board for different businesses, and I think a lot of the businesses I named were software businesses. We worked with a lot of course creators as well. We worked with some service-based businesses. At the end of the day, a lot of the principles apply regardless of the industry you're in.
I want to know because I love learning about names. Tell me, how did you guys come up with Teal Agency?
Yeah, till agency. There's some aspect of cultivation, that we really liked, right? In helping people grow their business and cultivate more leads. I've moved to this more rural area. We've done, homesteading would be maybe a little bit over the top. I don't know if I could consider myself a homesteader necessarily, but I do love this general area we're in. Chris and I, for us, like gardening's always been a big part of one of our hobbies that we do together. There's something interesting to me about tilling the soil and planting new things. And not just in the cultivation and the actual growing of things, but I think in tilling too, you're kind of digging up a little bit as well. So there's a lot there, to that name. But yeah, it's as with anything else with partners too. We had a whole list of names. A lot of them were really funny, a lot that we joke around about now, but ultimately settled on till.
Love that. I love hearing the just the story behind the names because I think it says a lot about the direction and just the vision of the business. So thanks for sharing that. So you have this belief that understanding your customer is really crucial to an effective marketing strategy, which is 100% true. How do you go about gaining that knowledge and understanding of like who that client is and how that directly impacts the lead generation in marketing?
I'm glad you brought that up because it sounds like something that's really basic, but I think it's a step that people, because they intuitively understand that generally, who they're going after as a customer, it's a step that I think sometimes people skip, right? Like they don't actually put pen to paper and start crafting like ideal customer profile or a customer persona or a customer avatar. But understanding your customer is really key to having good conversations with potential leads, right? One of the things that I'm really interested in is practical ways that we can better understand the types of people that we're going after. And I think at the core of that is having conversations or being able to have conversations with people. I think naturally when we start a business, this comes pretty easy for a lot of entrepreneur types. We get out there and we start talking about what it is that we're doing and friends and family here. And, that's where our first customers and clients come from. And that feels a little bit easy. For whatever reason, it's harder for people to imagine going from, kind of their circle of friends and family and the people they know to all these people they don't. Somewhere along the way, scale causes maybe a little bit of fear or just confusion, overwhelm in terms of how to do it. But I think that the principles that we use in the beginning in growing our business are key for growing our business down the line as well. The only difference is that we're not having conversations one on one with people. We're trying to have conversations one to many, through podcast interviews like this, or through building an email list, or through social media. I think early on, having as many conversations with the people that you are trying to work with as possible is key because you can learn a lot through a conversation and you become better at having conversations, right? Like we all have people in our life that we like talking to and start thinking about, what are some of the reasons we like talking to them? They're probably insightful. They might be humorous, whatever the reasons are. So we start learning how to engage people and we start learning what are those things that people are actually interested in.
Very good way to approach that. I love it. What are some of the key strategies that you've developed with Formalytics that really affect lead generation? Can you share maybe like a success story of somebody that really got a big boost on their clients through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So Formalytics is like our technical company name. I should probably take that out of our bio altogether. Where you can find me, I'm the CEO of a company called Badao. The product Badao, formerly named Sumo. So for people who've been around for a little bit, they might recognize that name because it used to be like the form and pop up tool. So we've come along in the last 8 months. We acquired it late last year, and we're in the process of revamping that. And it's a tool to help people build their email list but then also better engage with people on their websites. I think when you think about a pop up, right, a lot of people think about this annoying sort of obtrusive thing that gets in the way of your scroll. But really, a well crafted pop up meets people where they're at, delivering kind of whatever the message is that you want to deliver. So as far as like, success stories go, we can take this in a number of different directions, but a lot of crafting a effective pop-up is understanding where your customer is at in the customer journey. One of the things I like to have people do is imagine they have a physical location. Like if someone's over looking at, let's say it's a running shop. If someone's looking over at the shoes, right? You wouldn't go over there and be like, hey, take a look at these shirts. You'd be like, hey, what can I help you do with these shoes, right? Like what questions can I answer about these shoes? So crafting a pop-up should work the same way. If someone is browsing your shop and they're on a specific page, maybe a specific product category, crafting a pop-up that, is maybe specific to those products. Maybe it's a quiz that helps you find the right whatever template, shoe, list goes on, is going to be more effective than one that's just sort of generic and is like, get on my newsletter, right? One of my favorite success stories recently that I've been sharing is around an exit intent pop-up. An exit intent pop-up is a pop-up that appears before someone leaves the page. So we can track your mouse so that as it goes up to the X, right, a pop-up appears. We have one customer who's using an exit intent pop-up on their webinar registration form. They sell an online course, via a webinar. And basically they're able to show a bonus to people before they decide I'm not going to opt in for this webinar. So people land on the page. Not everybody registers for the webinar. Before the people who are not going to register leave, they see this bonus like, hey, sign up and also get our free guide to pricing, whatever it is. That has resulted in hundreds of extra webinar registrations for them, which down the line, down their funnel, turns into potentially thousands of extra dollars.
So I'm going to ask some very basic questions here so everybody can be on the same level of understanding when it comes to pop-ups and forms. So are you saying I should have a pop-up in every one of the pages of my website?
No, probably not.
So let's talk about a little bit about strategies of where do you think are the best places to have those pop-ups?
So, one, just kind of expanding our idea of what we're doing here too. It's not just pop-ups, but forms in general. Like what we're trying to do is get people to opt into something so that we get their contact information and we can follow up with them, right? Because not everybody who lands on your website is going to be ready to book or purchase. And so we're trying to get their information so that via email or text message, however you do it, you can follow up with those people, continue having that conversation, and hopefully nurture them to book or purchase from you. Typically we would say on like the homepage of your website, having some sort of freebie available, something that gets people to put their email address in is a good idea. Typically because the homepage of your website is, one of the most important pages, it's where people get an idea of what it is that you do and what kind of value you can provide. And so it's one of your most visited pages. But in addition to that, just going into Google Analytics and getting a sense of like, what are your top 10 most visited pages? That'd be probably a pretty good place to start in including some sort of pop-up or some sort of opt-in to get people onto your list. And like I said, you want that, ideally, that opt-in to connect to whatever it is that, whatever information it is that that person's consuming, So the more specific your opt-in can be, the better. Because as somebody is reading a blog post about, whatever it is, they're thinking about that topic already. So if they have an opportunity to go deeper in that topic just by giving their email address for free, then they're much more likely to do so.
Let's be honest, you didn't build this business to work 80 hours a week, chasing invoices and solving problems at midnight. But now you're hit a wall. You've outgrown DIY and you're spinning your wheels trying to scale and stay sane. That's where one-on-one coaching with me comes in. This is not a cookie cutter program. It's tailored, strategic support designed specifically for founders like you, the ones who built something from nothing and are now carrying all the weight. We'll get clear on what's keeping you stuck, simplify your focus, and build a plan that gets results without burning you out. If you want a second brain and no BS sounding board, and someone who can help you make better, faster, smart decisions, this is for you. Head out to accidentalceo.co/coaching. That's accidentalceo.co/coaching. And let's work together to grow your business and take your life back. So besides making sure that the pop-up content or form content is in alignment with where the person is in that customer journey, is there any other best practices that you can share with the audience when it comes to pop-ups and forms?
Yeah, 100%. And going back to this that concept of conversations and really understanding your customer, one of the key questions I think that people are asking themselves as they make a purchasing decision is something like, can you really do that for someone like me? Can you really do that for someone like me? If you just think through some of the recent purchases maybe you have made, you can probably think through, okay, yeah, that's really kind of what I'm asking myself. If I'm interested in something, it's probably because that business has demonstrated that they understand me and my specific needs. And then, as I think through objections, I'm wondering, like, is this solution really going to work for me? Right. One of my favorite examples, sort of recent purchase for me, is a yoga. It was like this yoga program, but it was for stretching. Like, I'm not a yoga person, like I don't give off yoga vibes, right? Like if you meet me, you're not like Davey, he's into yoga, right? And so this is something that I would usually just kind of push off. But, I came across this Instagram ad and they were talking about a very specific sports injury. All right. That can happen with lifting and certain kind of sports. And so that right there caught my attention. And again, you can see how important it is to be able to enter into a conversation that people are already having. A conversation I'm having with myself is like, why do I have this pain in my hips? Right. And I knew it's related to these things. So this yoga program, I want to say it's called like the science of stretching or something like that. It's specifically geared toward athletes, people who want greater mobility so that they can, continue to perform in those sports. And so as I read the reviews, I mean, because they're targeting that specific niche of people, it's all people who are saying, oh, yeah, I had this hip pain and now this hip pain is gone. We want to be able to achieve something similar we're really in our copy across our landing pages and our website, but especially in our pop ups, right? I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is that they keep their copy way too generalized because they don't want anybody to feel, left out. They think that they're going to get more opt ins that way. But really, when we understand our customer, we're able to speak to a specific need. It demonstrates we understand them and it instills confidence in them that their specific problem is going to be solved. If that copy of that yoga program I bought, if it was like, hey, just get rid of your aches and pains, probably wouldn't have done it for me. But they were speaking to some specific things that I, as a very much aging former athlete is dealing with, right? So trying to get specific with your understanding of your customer. Something else, I mean, just as far as like understanding the nuances of your customer, I think this is especially relevant for photographers, right? In a luxury market. I think like one mistake I see photographers make as they try to reach a luxury market is they think that all of the luxury market is the same, and it's not. There's people who care about the reputation aspect of things. Like they are the kind of person who wants to spend a lot of money on things because they want to spend money on the best and they want everybody to know that they're going to spend money on the best. There's a whole nother subset of customers though that they like nice things. It's not so much a reputation thing for them. They just want, they want quality, and those people tend to be a little bit more low key. And so reaching those types of people is very different. One, you might reach, that latter group I was just talking about. You might reach by talking about the intimate moments that you're going to be able to capture as an expert that other photographers or less experienced photographers might miss. All right. But because of your experience and because of your expertise, you're going to capture all of those things, all of those unique details of the day. Whereas the group that cares very much about the reputation and having the best and knowing everybody has the best, maybe you're going to better capture them by really going heavy on social proof and saying, hey, everything I publish ends up in XYZ magazine and, whatever, right? Same market in the sense that they're willing to spend the same amount of money, but very different driving or like driving purchasing decisions on their mind. All of that you need to think through as you're crafting this pop up. I know that got pretty philosophical there, but as far as like a better, some more practical tips that you can implement into your pop-ups, benefit driven language. Somebody should be able to understand exactly what it is that they're going to get out of this. And what they get out of it is never actually what you're providing. And what I mean by that is, you might be providing a 15-page ebook. Guess what? People don't want a 15-page ebook. They want whatever solution it is that you're offering in that 15-page ebook. And that's really what you want to focus on. Kind of the medium in which you deliver that solution is sort of irrelevant. I think one of the mistakes that I made early on was thinking, oh, if I make this 100-page whatever, or if I make this 10-hour long video, that's really what's going to draw people in, because it's like so much content, right? It's like people don't have time for that kind of content. It's better, it'd be better if it was 15 minutes and got to and deliver them a solution. So if you can deliver a quick win for people, that's going to give people a taste. And anytime you can deliver a quick win for people, people are never like, oh yeah, that was great, never going back there. You're going to be the person they go back to. I would encourage you to think through things that already work for you and your customers. Some of our best lead magnets and some of our best freebies and opt-ins across our websites are tools that we use in our business that we have templatized for others. So Krista, for instance, in the brand and website design business, one of our most popular downloads was, I think it was a mood board template. And so it was a template she actually used for her clients. She's obviously gotten a ton of great feedback on it over the last decade plus in business. And all she did was turn it into a template that others can use as they're considering a rebrand. And it's the perfect download, right? Because if somebody is downloading a mood board template, they're obviously in the beginning stages of either creating a brand for a new business or a rebrand. And it's the perfect thing to let people, or to give people a glimpse of the expertise that she can provide them. And so that was a really effective lead magnet. But guess what? It didn't cost a lot of money to create because we already had it. And it didn't take a lot of time to create because, again, we already had it. It was just a matter of turning it into a template that others could use. I know that was a lot there. I should probably take a breath. Happy to answer any follow-up questions too.
Those are great. I think I really appreciate the whole thought process and knowledge that you have on just the ideal process of targeting that client. My question is, how much of that is built into Badao? Is there any kind of maybe a template help in there, or something that would help these people that actually have no idea how to, walk through that process of understanding what the client need and crafting language to be attractive to that client? Is there any of that built into the system?
Yeah, and I'm really glad you asked about that specifically, because one of the things that you can do in Badao is you can create templates of your designs. All right, and so if, for instance, if you wanted to, you could go into Badao, create a set of templates that your audience could then use. But we have templates that people can already choose from as well. So already built in are some beautiful templates that you can get started with, and then it's just a matter of plugging in the details for your type of business. One of the other things that we've been doing is recording more YouTube tutorials that focus on, for instance, and I don't know how relevant this specific tutorial would be to your audience, but discount campaign. So if you are an e-commerce business, we have functionality that would allow you to generate unique discount codes for your audience and deliver those via pop-up. And then you can send that discount code over to your email marketing platform and remind people that they have this code, maybe a certain amount of time they have to use it in, and what the code is.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that, because I 100% agree with the whole thought process of how, mindful you should be in building this, so you are not alienating people with the pop-ups and forms. You're actually bringing them in and sharing some value with them. But I also know that most people are going to be lost on where to start with that. So I'm glad you guys have some of that built-in support in there. That's amazing.
Yeah, and keep it simple to get started. It's another one of the, I think, most common mistakes I see people make. Just because a feature does exist doesn't mean that you have to implement it, right? And I think some of the most successful opt-ins I've ever seen they're just simple pop-ups.
What are some of the other amazing features of Badao that you want to make sure everybody knows about?
Yeah, one of my favorite features of late is our tab feature, and basically this is how it works. Think of just a traditional pop-up, that shows up on a website, right? And so you might be browsing new shirts at your favorite, clothing store or whatever, and you're probably going to see some sort of like save 15% on your first purchase, right? You fill out the pop-up and you get a discount code. Lots of times you only see those pop-ups at the very beginning of your kind of browsing search. And you might not be ready to complete it, right? So when you hit the X, that pop-up disappears. And then, how many times have you been, on a website where you X out of the pop-up and then you're like, no, I actually do want to purchase something and I want to go find that coupon again. And so what are you doing? You're usually leaving the website, coming back, trying it in incognito mode, whatever it might be. Well, with the tab functionality, what happens is when somebody exits out of the pop-up, it minimizes to the bottom of the screen in just a little tab. And so it looks like a little smart bar at the top of or at the bottom of the screen, and it scrolls with you. So it's out of your way, but at the same time, you can always get it back. So you click on that tab and then the pop-up appears again. And it's sort of a win-win, right? For us, we want to create forms and pop-ups that people actually complete. So for the business, this is a pop-up that never really goes away. But for the user, it's not annoying and in your face. So that's one of my favorite little features of Badao that's highly effective.
That's a great one. I love that. Very, very creative. And again, just solving a problem that you see out there. You're just applying the same principles you're talking about on your own business, which I love. I know people are going to want to know, maybe you can mention some of the integrations and partnerships that you guys have already, because obviously the intent is to build your email list and collect those leads. So what are some of maybe the main companies that you guys have collaborations with right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the most popular ones are going to be ConvertKit and Flowdesk. Are you on either one of those or
Yeah.
familiar?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a Flowdesk girl. Been since they were beta testing that thing a long time ago.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. So Flowdesk is one of our newest integrations. So we work seamlessly with Flowdesk. ConvertKit's another popular one in the creative industry, and so we also have a really good deep integration with ConvertKit as well. We have integrations with probably a dozen to 15 more email marketing platforms. Probably have an integration with the platform that your listeners are using, and we're continuing to work on more integrations as well. If you don't see your integration, though, we have Zapier integration. So that's something that you can fall back on as well. I will say one of the great things about Badao is that you can hook up multiple integrations. So if you are trying to send your leads to more than one place, you're able to do that.
So, putting back just your entrepreneur hat, we'll talk a little bit about your experience there. When you found yourself running more than one business, maybe you had, your hands in 2 to 3 at a time at some point. What were maybe some of the lessons you've learned from that you can share with people that maybe are multi-passionate and have more than one business like you did at some point? Is there something in there that you can share with them?
I think how you organize your day becomes really important. I think it's important to make time for deep work for each of the businesses that you're running. I've always been a multi-passionate person, and so I've usually had more than one project going on at a time. And only recently, right now, pretty much my sole focus is Badao. I will say that being focused is really helpful, and so one of the things that you have to guard against is being spread too thin. And that's why I think how you organize your day, if you do have multiple projects going on, that you really have time that you can spend in deep work for those businesses. But even beyond that, the margin in your day to just have ideas. I mean, I think something that's totally underrated is like that disconnection time so that your brain can just kind of run wild. And I always find that that's when I think of some of my best ideas. Running multiple businesses at a time definitely made that a little bit more challenging. With that said, I do think that there's some strengths of being multi passionate and having different projects in that you can take lessons and learnings from one business and say, oh, yeah, okay, I can totally apply this to this other project I have going on.
I agree. Those are great. Those are great tips. Can you tell everybody where they can find you if they want to learn more about Badao and work with you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find Badao over at badao.com, BDOW.com. It's free to create an account, so you can jump in there and take a look at the how the program works. And then if you like what you see, you can always upgrade to one of our more professional plans as well. You can also subscribe to our newsletter over there. We publish mostly about marketing tips. So if you're trying to learn how to build an email list, it's a great resource.
I forgot to ask you, so we cannot leave without it. We need to know about Badao's name. I've heard that story already, but I want them to hear it too because it's such an interesting name. So tell them how the name Badao came to be.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I thought you'd ask right after the till agency explanation. But I think you're right. I think that a name says so much about a business, right? Badao, we have a blog post and a video that kind of goes through the highlights of how we named the business. But like I said, when we acquired the business, it was called Sumo. The tool is called Sumo. Sumo, though, is related to a bunch of other tools that the Sumo Group still owns and operates, like AppSumo and KingSumo. And so, to avoid confusion, we knew going into the deal that we were going to have to rebrand this tool. We did that sooner than later. It was one of the things that we did in the first quarter or just in the beginning of the second quarter of this year. And we spent a lot of time. There were a lot of conversations about what the name should be. If you've ever gone through this process before, there were arguments for a more straightforward name, and then there was arguments for a name like Badao that doesn't have much meaning until you connect some meaning to it. And there's really good arguments across the board, I think, for both sets of names. When we were thinking through the process of naming Badao, though, we were also thinking about the name Sumo. Sumo doesn't lend itself to, it doesn't inform anybody as to what they're going to find in the tool, right? So it's not as if we are moving from something that was really clear potentially to something that wasn't really clear. The other thing that we liked about Sumo was that it was just, sort of memorable. There's like an aspect to it, like sumo sized results that we liked as well. And so we sort of kept that in mind as we were thinking about new names for the tool. Badao was originally found on an auction domain site, but it was Badow. And Todd, who is the owner, CEO of Show It, he was like, hey, I found this. We were talking about this, and he was like, I found this domain. I found this name in this domain auction site. And I was like, cool, but like, this is not like when he first told me, I was like, this is not what I'm not about this. But he was like, I think I'm going to try to, bid on it. And I was like, okay, I guess if you can pick this up for pretty cheap. So sure enough, bidding war later, he's like, I got it. And I'm like, yay. I mean, it was funny. I like actively campaigned against the name at first, but one of the things about the name, there's some onomatopoeia there, like it is something that some people say when they do something cool, so it's like you do something cool and Badao. And so there is sort of this really good energy to the name that we liked. And as we talked to people about it, we'd always bring it up, and it was one in a list of names, but it always seemed to be the one that people remembered, right? Afterwards, like, they'd ask what does that mean? And they were like, oh, okay. And so from that point on, whenever somebody did something cool, like they'd say Badao, And so it just became this thing. And so when we hang out with people, it became the thing that people said, even amongst friends of mine who are not entrepreneurs, not in the digital marketing world, otherwise don't really understand what it is that I do, right? Even they enjoyed saying it. So it kind of stuck after a while. And that's what we settled on. Obviously, we went with a shortened version of it. It's BDOW instead of BADOW. We own like basically all the variations. And so any misspellings will redirect you to, the correct place. And it's funny. And one of the things, of course, with the rebrand, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback. People love it. We've gotten, a bit of negative feedback too, people who hate it. But everybody feels some way about it, and I think in marketing especially, there's something to be said for people feeling strongly about it one way or another. So that's the name. That's a little bit of the story. The full story is on our website, so people can check that out. It is pretty humorous.
That's awesome. Yeah, you can't say it without some kind of energy to it. So it's definitely an amazing name. I'm all about names. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for all the amazing tips that you share with the audience today. I really appreciate having you on the show. And I'm excited for people to use more Badao and, start growing their email list.
Yeah, thank you. Well, enjoyed having another conversation with you, and hopefully I'll have another one again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us this week, and we'll see you again next Wednesday on another episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Bye. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us in the world where creativity and business strategy collide. I am Nata Salvatore, thrilled to have shared this time with you. Remember, every episode is a step closer to mastering the art of being an accidental CEO. So don't miss out. Hit subscribe, drop us a sweet review, and spread the word to your creative tribe. Your next big breakthrough could be just one episode away. Join us next time for more insights, laughs, and actionable tips. Keep pushing boundaries, dreaming big, and embracing the beautiful chaos of entrepreneurship. Here's to make magic happen in your business and beyond.